pay $4,400 for a mid-test Tudor Black Bay monochrome. You pay almost $10,000 for a Rolex Submariner. And a Royal Oak extra thin, it costs like $36,000.
Joe Rogan didn't even hide his anger when the cameras switched on. His voice came out sharp, irritated, already loaded with the kind of energy that told you he had been waiting for this moment. He leaned forward, eyebrows pulled tight, and said the part that had everyone sitting up. Rolex, the brand that built its entire image on prestige and trust, had been caught pushing fake watches pumped out of cheap Chinese assembly lines. Rogan didn't treat it like a small scandal that could be brushed off with PR. He treated it like a betrayal, a punch in the face to every collector who saved for years to buy a luxury piece only to learn it wasn't even real. As the studio lights reflected off his expression, he made it clear he wasn't giving Rolex a pass. He wanted answers and he wanted them now.
Like, I brought my watch. I have a Rolex that my friend Lorenzo gave me, and I brought it to the watch store, and I said, this thing's always fast. I said, it's always like, after a couple months, it's like 5 minutes fast. And they go, yep. They go, yeah.
Really?
It's just what it does.
Okay.
And I go, hold on. I go, so you're telling me that it just is always going to be fast? They're like, yeah. It's just like every few months you got to like reset it.
The first part that set him off was how long Rolex kept this buried. According to leaked internal documents swirling around the watch community, the company knew the production line in Shenzhen was mixing authentic parts with off-brand components to pass as the latest models. Rogan couldn't believe a multi-billion-dollar corporation put its entire reputation in the hands of factories that were notorious for shortcuts. He kept repeating the same frustration. Rolex wasn't tricked. Rolex made the decision. That decision was about profit, not quality, and he wasn't about to let anyone pretend otherwise. He slammed the table lightly as he emphasized how collectors loyal to the brand were treated like cattle, fed marketing nonsense, while the company cashed in on knockoff production. Rogan brought up messages from disgruntled workers who claimed Rolex executives visited those Chinese facilities multiple times. The worker said the suits acted like everything was normal, brushing off serious concerns about materials that didn't match the specifications Rolex bragged about. Rogan's jaw tightened each time he read a claim from someone who was actually on the inside. He pointed out how funny it was that a watch brand obsessed with precision couldn't be bothered to ensure their own factories weren't mixing in unauthorized parts. He joked bitterly that maybe Rolex should stop bragging about Swiss heritage.
I hate the idea of fake watch, though. There was a watch guy online who was like, I have 2 Daytonas. And he was like, this is the best one I've ever seen. Perfect. He had to take it apart to look at parts that were inside, like a spin wheel.
Yeah, look at these. One of those is fake. The one on the right is fake. Yeah, I'd buy that. That's incredible, though.
The replicas are crazy.
They're so good.
What irritated Rogan even more was the arrogance coming from the top. When the scandal first surfaced, the CEO tried to paint it as sabotage from outside competitors. Rogan laughed in disbelief at the idea that a rival brand somehow hacked their supply chain and forced them into shady deals with cut-rate manufacturers. He reminded viewers that these facilities weren't hidden. Rolex executives signed off on them. Factory managers confirmed this. There were travel logs. There were contracts. Rogan shook his head and asked how the CEO even expected anyone to believe such a fantasy. He said only someone insulated by wealth and yes men would think that excuse could work. Rogan then brought up the collectors who had reached out to him. Dozens of people sent pictures of watches costing tens of thousands that turned out to have movements sourced from the same suppliers used by low-tier replica makers. Some owners took their pieces in for servicing only to be told parts didn't belong to any official Rolex production run. Rogan described the horror on those customers' faces, the sinking realization that their prized possessions weren't what they paid for. He said no customer base should ever feel that level of betrayal from a luxury brand that prides itself on trust. The way he spoke made it clear he felt personally offended. Maybe he wasn't a hardcore watch collector, but he cared about honesty. And he hated manipulation. Rogan pointed out that Rolex's entire empire rested on the idea of authenticity. You weren't buying a watch, you were buying status. And status only works when the object is real. Now that illusion had been shattered, and Rogan said the CEO's reaction made everything worse. Instead of admitting wrongdoing, the executive seemed irritated that people were even asking questions. Rogan played a clip of a recent interview where the CEO tried to brush off the scandal as noise, saying the brand didn't need to answer to online hysteria. The dismissiveness in his tone made Rogan snap. He said the CEO needed a reality check because the people he was talking down to were the same ones who built Rolex into a giant. The podcast room felt tense as Rogan shifted into the money side of the scandal. He explained that Rolex kept its supply low on purpose to keep prices high. Collectors waited years for certain models, only to now learn many of those delays weren't because of craftsmanship, but because the factories in China couldn't keep up with their blended production schedule. Some runs weren't even fully Swiss anymore. Rogan said this made the shortage look staged, a manipulated tactic to push desperation and hype, while saving millions through cheap labor. He called it greed dressed up as exclusivity. Rogan then questioned how far back the problem went. Some watch experts said the practice could date back almost a decade. That would mean thousands of collectors unknowingly purchased hybrid pieces marketed as pure Swiss luxury. Rogan took a deep breath, his frustration boiling over. He asked why the CEO wasn't stepping down if the brand had sunk this low. He said any leader who presides over such a scandal shouldn't get to hide behind PR teams. He wanted accountability and real consequences. He mocked the CEO's attempt to blame isolated suppliers. Rogan said it made no sense because Rolex controlled the entire chain from start to finish. He said blaming suppliers was like blaming your shoes for your feet hurting. He ridiculed the notion that these fake blended watches slipped through quality testing. He reminded listeners that Rolex markets itself as the most meticulous watchmaker in the world. Every piece supposedly goes through countless inspections. Rogan's voice dripped sarcasm as he asked how such a thorough process somehow missed the fact that hundreds of watches had off-brand movements and substandard metals. Rogan brought up a leaked email where a senior executive told managers to avoid or drawing public attention to discrepancies. Rogan stopped for a moment just to absorb the sheer boldness of that line. He said this was the kind of sentence that proves intent. The company knew something was wrong. They didn't investigate. They covered it. Rogan said this wasn't incompetence. It was dishonesty. People were paying luxury prices for items that belonged in discount bins. He turned his attention to the customers still defending Rolex. Rogan shook his head at how some loyalists refused to believe any of this. He compared it to sports fans who defend their team even when the owners run the franchise into the ground. He said luxury brands rely on blind loyalty more than anything else. And Rolex knew that. That's why they felt bold enough to cut corners. Rogan said collectors shouldn't act like the brand is their friend. A company that lets fake components slide into high-end pieces isn't a friend. It's a predator taking advantage of trust. Rogan asked why Rolex kept using the same marketing language about purity and heritage, even after internal audits flagged production issues. He made fun of the scripted ads showing master craftsmen in spotless workshops, calling it a fantasy designed to make customers forget the truth. He said luxury brands love to show slow-motion clips of artisans polishing metal, when in reality, half the production was shipped to facilities where speed mattered more than precision. He said Rolex was selling an idea more than a product, and now that idea had collapsed. He then played a message sent to his show from an anonymous watchmaker who used to work with Rolex's repair centers. The watchmaker said he opened cases and found components he had never seen before, pieces that didn't match any official Rolex catalog. When he brought this up to his supervisor, he was told to service the watch and move on. Rogan's face twisted with disgust. He said this was the culture Rolex created: silence, denial, and profit above honesty. Rogan didn't just stop at the CEO. He went after the entire board. He said they should have halted production the moment complaints surfaced. He said any board that allows fake blended watches to enter the market should be replaced with people who care more about integrity than revenue. The way he emphasized the word integrity made the viewers feel his frustration wasn't just for show, it was genuinely personal for him. Rogan also raised concerns about Rolex's aggressive legal tactics. According to several watch communities, Rolex threatened anyone who tried exposing early leaks. Rogan rolled his eyes as he explained how the brand attacked bloggers, small repair shops, and collectors who posted evidence online. He said the company acted like a bully, attacking individuals instead of owning their mistakes. Rogan said this behavior made Rolex look weak, not strong. He then shifted to the investment market. For years, Rolex watches were treated like assets, often resold for double their original price. Rogan said the scandal shattered that confidence. Resellers suddenly had to check every detail of watches they once assumed were authentic. Auctions stalled, buyers grew nervous, the entire secondary market trembled. Rogan said the CEO destroyed decades of trust in one swoop because he prioritized shortcuts over craftsmanship. Rogan mocked the interviews where brand ambassadors tried defending Rolex. He said watching them squirm was painful, none of them addressed the real issue. They only repeated scripted praise. Rogan said ambassadors should demand answers too because their names were attached to fakes. He said celebrities should stop pretending they care about craftsmanship when they're defending a company that didn't. He also highlighted how other luxury brands reacted. Many distanced themselves, hoping not to be grouped with Rolex. Rogan said competitors privately celebrated because Rolex handed them an opportunity on a silver platter. Customers looking for genuine craftsmanship were already running to other brands. Rogan jokingly said Rolex did more marketing for other companies in 2 weeks than those companies could have done on their own in 2 years. Rogan questioned whether Rolex even deserved its iconic reputation anymore. He said the brand became lazy and dependent on marketing instead of skill. He said a luxury brand that mixes authentic parts with factory line leftovers doesn't deserve loyalty. Every time he said this, his voice carried disappointment more than rage. It was like he was grieving what Rolex could have been if greed hadn't taken over. He commented on how the CEO seemed annoyed that the public cared so much. Rogan replayed the CEO's dismissive tone, shaking his head as he wondered how a leader could be so detached. He said the CEO acted like customers had no right to question him. Rogan said that arrogance was exactly why the scandal spiraled. If the CEO had stepped forward early, apologized, and taken responsibility, the brand might have survived with less damage. Instead, he hid, denied, and deflected. Rogan then read statements from whistleblowers claiming the CEO personally approved cost-cutting measures that pushed production overseas. The CEO allegedly dismissed concerns about authenticity, saying customers would never notice. Rogan clenched his fists while reading that line, calling it the most insulting part of the entire scandal. He said the CEO underestimated people, assuming no one would question the purity of their watches. Rogan said that kind of thinking revealed the brand's true philosophy. He also blasted the PR campaign Rolex launched, calling it cheap and embarrassing. He said no slick commercial or glossy tagline could fix a scandal built on fake parts. Rogan laughed bitterly as he described how the brand suddenly tried highlighting its values, pretending to care about heritage again. He said the campaign was nothing but panic wrapped in pretty visuals. Rogan then criticized how Rolex tried shifting blame onto partners and contractors, saying the company wanted a scapegoat instead of accountability. He said a real leader steps forward and accepts responsibility, not hides behind corporate jargon. He said Rolex didn't deserve sympathy and the CEO didn't deserve forgiveness. He wrapped up the segment by saying consumers should demand transparency. He said trust doesn't belong to Rolex anymore because the company didn't respect the people who supported it. He encouraged viewers to think for themselves and stop worshiping brands built on lies. Rogan made it clear he believed Rolex dug its own grave through arrogance, greed, and calculated deception. He ended by saying he wouldn't buy another Rolex again even if the brand begged him. He said a luxury item only matters when honesty supports it. Rolex abandoned that foundation, and Joe Rogan was more than ready to tell the entire world.